Our next storyteller, I have known Rosemary back when she was just...
Warren, you can't use notes.
If I don't use the flyer, I'm going to get Lytle wrong. Is it Lytle?
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's so hard when you know somebody for so long with that other name. But I actually knew Rosemary back when we worked together at the Tampa Tribune, which was, I'm not going to mention how many years ago that was, but she was this amazing ace reporter, and then I remember, you know, her being this amazing columnist at the Gazette, and I've seen her do such amazing things in this community, and it is really, really such an honor to introduce Rosemary.
Wow, this is such a fabulous evening. I am so honored to have followed Mary Lou Makepeace and Richard Scorman. Where'd Richard go? Who, when he received the Divine Award, I said Richard brought the flavor to Colorado. Tonight in this room, we are the flavor. We are the flavor. This is an amazing gathering. The progressives in this room, an amazing gathering. If they wanted to find all of us, here we are together. It's so wonderful. We're going to live together. We're going to fight together. We're going to be together. We are here. No, it's not San Francisco. It's not Chicago. It's Colorado Springs. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. Yeah. So I just love our interpreters. I don't think I've ever experienced anything so wonderful as what I'm about to experience as she interprets these words. I hope I get them out. She's just so amazing. I think we should give her another round. And I know her brother from St. John's Baptist Church. It's just a wonderful thing. CP, congratulations on this 20th anniversary year. This has been an incredible year. And for me, this is also the 20th year that my daughter and I have lived in Colorado Springs. It's also our anniversary. It's also our anniversary. You know, I was tricked to Colorado Springs. I was tricked here because no self-respecting African-American journalist would come here knowing what was about to happen in the fall of 1992. So we were in Tampa, that bastion of liberalism, right? Downtown that we were in. We had no clue. We had no clue of what would happen here in Colorado Springs. But, as I said, tricked here. You know, I was leaving Orlando, Florida, another bastion of liberalism, right? When you compare it. And I was in life transition. I've always called it life transition. I was actually getting a divorce from John Harris. That's the other journalist Harris, the sports writer, the Courtney Rose dad. And Orlando, Florida was not big enough for the two of us. And we both ended up leaving. John left his position as a sports writer for the St. Petersburg Times, covering the Orlando Magic. His dream job. It wasn't big enough for the two of us. And I left my position at the Orlando Sentinel, where I was, believe it or not, the society writer. I'm channeling Eve Tilley tonight. Wherever you are, my sister in hats, I so appreciate you. Mary Lou said, yeah, the hats are the same, but what about the... And I just said, my sister under the skin and over it. So channeling Eve tonight, wherever you are. So leaving Orlando, coming to Colorado Springs because of an invitation due to the life transition. Courtney Rose and I needed a new home. We were in life transition. I needed to be someplace where I could raise this darling child, then 4 years old. Just turned 24. I can't believe the child. She's, you know, a woman now, 24. I still pay some of her bills, but she's a woman now. Frank Lytle still pays many of her bills, but our daughter's a woman. But coming here on the invitation of my sister and her husband, both military, and she knew that the life transition was really socking it to me. And she said, you can come to Colorado Springs. And my first thought was really, Colorado Springs? Why would I do a thing like that? But you can come to Colorado Springs. We've got a room for you here in Colorado Springs. It's got a balcony here in Colorado Springs, and it faces west. You'll be looking at the mountains in Colorado Springs. And I'm thinking, do they ride horses in Colorado Springs? What's going on in Colorado Springs? And she said, there's a newspaper here. I've never read it. There are paper boxes on the corner. I know there's a newspaper. And everyone who knows me knows that from the earliest time of my life, from the time when my father, whose family had been sharecroppers in Mississippi, my father, who could not go to school all 12 months out of the year, my father, whose greatest dream was education for his oldest daughter. From the time that he taught me my alphabet at 3 1/2, I've been infatuated with these words and with those letters and with putting them together, and I always wanted to work for a newspaper, even though my father said, go on TV. You'll look good on TV and you'll make money. That didn't work out either. But I pursued this thing called journalism, and so on my sister's invitation, on the sketchiness of these newspaper boxes that were on the corner, I was lured here to Colorado Springs. And imagine the timing of my coming here in August of '92. Of course, my sister Bernadette, we call her Bunny. Courtney Rose calls her Aunt Bunny. There's an Eddie Murphy joke about Aunt Bunny. You can go find that probably somewhere on YouTube. But so on this invitation from Aunt Bunny, she hadn't read the paper, so she didn't know about what was going on in this community. And she didn't know how it would terrify me. How it would terrify me. Arriving here and finding out about this thing called Amendment 2 that was about to be voted on, and I wasn't even here long enough and knew about it long enough to even register to vote in the election. So with 53% of the vote, it passed. It passed. And here I am in this place, certainly out of place in so many ways. A child of the South, out of place in so many ways. An African-American child, a part of the legacy of slavery and then the legacy of the hope for freedom in this country, out of place. In this place that, you remember the MCI employees called it a spongy loaf of Wonder Bread. And I wrote about it in my column, and they tried to run me out of this place. Here I am, I find myself in this place as a journalist. And as an old school, hardcore, back in the day kind of journalist. I mean, I came up under journalists like Fred Blevins, who was my mentor from Ball State University, an old school, kept a bottle of bourbon in the desk in the journalism department at Ball State kind of journalist. Old school journalists like Ken Atwater, who was, every other word was, damn it, and we're gonna make deadline. Damn it, we're gonna make deadline. At the Ball State Daily News, one of the best papers, student papers still in the country. Prints 5 days a week. Wonderful old school journalists, even like Cliff Foster. There's some gazetters in the house, and I know that you remember Cliff Foster, our city editor, who liked vodka and would say, "Come with me, my little lamb," as he's about to edit your column. Lamb to slaughter. Old school journalists, and so because they were old school journalists, I was an old school journalist. And I really believe that you sat at the back of the room. You might sit outside the meeting. You really didn't talk to anybody unless you needed a quote from them. You certainly didn't develop real relationships. You went to the city council meeting and you went back to the newsroom. It was real old school journalism. And so when I arrived at what was then the Gazette-Telegraph, having been hired by Todd Hager, who now I think still teaches journalism at Palmer High School, as just a freelancer, I was going to do a supplement for the Gazette. And then catching the attention of Wayne Stewart, who was the managing editor at the time, may his honorable soul rest in peace, one of the finest managing editors ever at any newspaper in this country. So Wayne Stewart said, once I said, I just returned from the National Association of Black Journalists Convention, and I'd like to come in and share with you some of the things that I've learned, and I'd really love to be able to talk to you about the contribution I could make to the Gazette. And he said, did you say NABJ? And I came in, and I'm going to tell you, the newsroom, like many parts of the community, wasn't showing the flavor. The flavor of the day was pretty vanilla. Pretty vanilla. But into that environment I came, and into that environment Courtney Rose came, and I was talking to Tracy Cooper, who was the PR person at District 11 while I was covering education, and she would give Courtney Rose a couch to sleep on while I was covering all those late night meetings. And Courtney Rose, under kind of her tutelage and the tutelage of Dr. Mary Thurman, kind of became this auxiliary journalist. And she'd always carry around a book and a pad. And if I needed an entree, there's my little prop. So I've got my daughter with me. Do you mind if she sits in on the interview, Marivera? So long, 20 years, that I remember when Lytle Rivera was just a stockbroker who went to Cowboys to line dance with me. I loved Lytle back then. Always find me in the line. He was so cool, he was a little stiff. He was so cool back then. Not when he came here, but back then. Love Lytle. That's how long I've been around. It was a wonderful thing for me when Steve Smith came to interview at the Gazette with, I know some of you probably remember the publisher Chris Anderson, one of the most progressive publishers that ever went through the Gazette. And I don't care what anybody has to say. Steve Smith, one of the greatest editors ever at the Gazette, came to interview, and he did something that I had never seen an editor do in an interview. He asked the publisher if he could meet with the newsroom staff. And we were like, huh? Wow. Well, that's different. And we all crowded into a little conference room at what was the old Gazette. It was the Gazette by that time. You know why they got rid of the name Gazette-Telegraph? They got rid of Gazette-Telegraph because at the time they said that newspapers that had two parts to their name would never survive. Would never survive. So they cut off the telegraph. And what happened? Did it survive? Maybe it was John Weiss. It's like this. I wonder. I can barely find it anymore. But it's a brochure. It still has an editorial page that sticks. became the editor, and he became my mentor, and he met with every single member of the newsroom staff. And I was busy writing my column. I was busy pissing off Ed Burcham, and a whole bunch of other people, and by this time, I think my buddy Lytle Rivera too. And it was my turn to meet with Steve Smith, and he sat down and he smiled at me, and I liked him immediately. I liked him, he had soul. I started calling him eventually. I'd introduce him and I'd say, and now a brother of another color, Steve Smith! And he'd love it every time I called him up to some national stage like that. But he looked at me and he said, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you really want to do next? And it was almost like something else inside of me that really had never thought about it before said, I'd like to be the Metro columnist. And he's like, what, really? Okay, all right then. Well, go away and write me 3 columns. And I went away and I went about my regular duties, my regular writing duties. I used to cover police, I used to cover education, I used to cover all kinds of stuff. I went away about my duties, and it took me 3 weeks to write those 3 columns. That's like 1,500 words. You will get fired on the first day if it takes you 3 weeks to write 1,500 words. That is not a good thing. But it took me 3 weeks, and I sent them to Steve Smith. And he said, that first one, I don't know about that one. That second one, I dislike it a little less. But that third one, if you could do this 3 times a week, you can be a columnist. And so I began to explore that space in my heart that was about connecting all of these dots that weren't connected, about being something different than an old school, hardcore, back in the day journalist. You know, we began to embrace this movement that was called civic journalism. And some people called it public journalism. I even got to meet Jay Rosen, who was kind of the godfather of public journalism. It was one of my greatest moments. And Steve Smith was right there, and he was encouraging me and egging me on. And every time someone would call about one of my columns and they'd say, I can't stand Rosemary Harris, I'm gonna stop the paper if she says black one more time. I'm gonna cancel my newspaper. And I asked Steve Smith once, how much is that worth? And he said, well, that's about $101 a year. They don't want to see black, we don't want them. And, all right. And I was like, okay, well, so you wait till you see tomorrow. Once I said I am black in the morning, black in the noonday, and black all night long, Ed Burcham stopped those ads. When I wrote about me and Ed Burcham in Dream, and you remember those Ed Burcham ads? Yes. Those awful, horrific, I'm so glad he's not doing this anymore. I can't even imagine what he would say in today's political climate. In those tiny little ads that they made all that money off. Me and Ed Burcham sitting on a fence, eating watermelon. I really dreamt that. It was more like a nightmare. But after I wrote about that, he stopped running those ads. This has been an amazing journey, not just for me as a columnist, not just for me as a parent, although, you know, your child gets a great education growing up in a place like this. It's either an education for good or for bad. But I think it turned out for good. We love Courtney Rose. We're so proud. So proud of Courtney Rose. She's the global child and the baby of all the community, and even at 24. But either it's for good or for bad. What we've done, I believe, all of us together, and I saw this in Ralph Routen's last column. He interviewed Mary Lou, and she said, we did this together. So as I look back and I look at those columns, I wrote about Mary Lou in some high-tech fighter plane or something, and you know, I even wrote about Lytle line dancing, and I wrote about incredible people like Clarence Shivers and the contributions that he and people like Sam Hunter made through their work with the Tuskegee Airmen and how we needed to reclaim that. I wrote about hats. I wrote about black women wearing hats. I wrote about my big mama and her hats and her sweet potato pies. And people would say, how many times is she going to write about hats? And I write about hats one more time. And I'm going to write what I feel. I'm going to write about me. Deal with it. Deal with it, because I'm here. And I'm not going to be like those MCI employees. I ain't no band leader. That's a line from The Godfather. I ain't no band leader, and I'm not going anywhere. Even though I did, for one moment, go to Virginia, to a great high-paying job at the Virginia Pilot as a columnist, I came back within a year. Thank you. And that was because Steve Smith said they're getting sick of the civic journalism thing, and I think that I'm going to be gone in a short time. And if you're coming back, you better come back now while I've got the muscle to rehire you. And so I came back. And the work that I've done since departing the Gazette, people depart the Gazette. It's always a big deal. They hustle you downstairs to the publisher's office. And they tell you that you don't have a job anymore, but here's your severance check. Don't say anything bad about us for 2 years, and we won't sue you. Okay. All right, so what do you do after that happens? What do you do when you've been this journalist who sat in the back of the room, discovered the front of the room, the heart and soul of community, talking to people across a back fence in Hillside, or at Mr. G's barbershop where I saw Jim Sauls getting his haircut today, or at Colorado College where I went to see the president sit in line for 4 hours. 4 hours. Moved from place to place to have 25 seconds with the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama. It was the greatest 25 seconds in my life. Richard was there. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful thing. What do you do when you've had all these experiences? On that very first day, after being downsized from the Gazette, I didn't really know where I was going to go on that Monday. And so I went to the NAACP. I didn't have anywhere else to go. I went to the NAACP bright and early, and Floyd Young, who is a fabulous retired Army languages expert, who's already lost his sight, was there early in the morning, and I told him that I'd been downsized. And he said, do we need to go get him? Do we need to throw our gazettes up on the door? Do we need to call the national office? And I said, no, just give me something to do. And he handed me a stack of papers and he said, here, do publicity for Freedom Fund. And that's how I started working with the NAACP. I became secretary, something that I always told Benjamin Reynolds, I need a better title than secretary. I want a different title than secretary. He said, well, you'll be the branch secretary. I said, okay, I'll take it. So Benjamin Reynolds, Reverend Benjamin Reynolds and I, who worked together to bring Katrina survivors here, who fought when they said you can't be a minister and be an out gay black man. Not in the Black Baptist Church. You can't take a van, even if it's free, from the Gay and Lesbian Fund to transport Katrina survivors, because we're not going to do that. I went right into the middle of that atmosphere. And it was really, based on coming here and being tricked here, my goal to help see it change. And so I was so proud. I was just talking about this with Roger and with Jess, talking about the NAACP National Board of Directors recently passing its marriage equality resolution. And only one person resigned from the 65-member board, so I'd say it was a good day. It was a very good day. And so we continue to move forward, and we continue to love on Colorado Springs and all its beauty and all of its ugliness, and gaze at the west-facing mountains, and have hopes and dreams for our children, and to speak the good fight of civil rights and social justice, and to be together in rooms like this one, and to love on each other because we know what we face outside that door. Outside those doors, we face the new Jim Crow. that Dr. Claire Garcia and Roger Butts talked about just in the last several weeks with the community. The new Jim Crow that to me looks a lot like the old Jim Crow. The new Jim Crow still can't vote, still can't go to school, still have opportunities closed to you because of collateral consequences. We must end the new Jim Crow. We must put it in the ground with the old Jim Crow. We're going to stomp on it. We're going to do a line dance on it. We're going to change it. We have to come together to continue to work, to move forward, to move this community forward for ourselves and for our children, and so that we can always be safe in coming together. Victoria, so we can come together, and so we can drink wine, and we can love, and we can keep fighting the good fight. We've done a good thing. We've done some good things. Let's keep moving forward. Yeah. Thank you so much.